Never been remodeled.
At this time, I will call the meeting of the Marshall City Council to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. To welcome everyone here this evening, we do have an agenda before us. Are there any changes to that agenda? Operate under that agenda. The first item then would be to consider the approval of the minutes from the August 22nd and August 29th meetings. The council does have the minutes of both of those meetings. Are there any corrections to note? If not, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Steve.
Second.
Seconded by John to approve the minutes as they have been presented. We will move to a vote. And we'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. Agenda item number 2, consider the award of quotation for a track skid loader for the street department. I'll call on Jason Anderson, Director of Public Works, City Engineer.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Included in the packet, you've got a tabulation of quotes received for a new track skid loader and the trade-in of an existing 2007 skid loader. There were 2 proposals considered. Proposal A, which included an undercarriage suspension, and B, without the suspension. The low proposal that we received that meets the minimum specifications required for Proposal A was from Titan Machinery in the amount of $55,617.40, and that's after deducting the trade-in. We did have $60,000 in our capital equipment fund levy for this purchase. So staff would recommend that council award the quote to Titan Machinery for a new 2024 Case TV 370B track skid loader. If there's any questions, Dean Kudrin, our Public Ways Superintendent, is here to help address them.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Questions?
I just have a comment. It didn't really come before equipment review because we said Dean knows what he needs, and Craig and I are both very familiar with equipment. And I know these prices are all over the place, but what the city is picking out is the best value for what we're going to use it for. You know, it just works well for what we do, and Craig and I had those conversations, and we're very comfortable coming from equipment review with us talking back and forth that this is a good purchase for the city.
Any other questions?
And maybe this is for Dean. Tell me the advantage of the undercarriage suspension other than it's more comfortable for the driver.
Well, it's definitely for ride control.
Dean, I'll have you come to the mic.
It's mainly for your ride control. It's like anything. If you're in it for 8 hours, you want the best ride you can get. And there is 3 machines that have it, but for the money, and you can see the money's pretty decent for what we're getting here. And also on the case, which isn't in the spec, it's got creep control. And what people don't realize, 60% of our time is used on the mill, and that mill throws that machine around pretty good. So, and we get employees that get out of it after about 3 hours, and they said, I've had enough of that thing for a while. So that's what I'm looking for. And it's a little heavier machine than what we have today. It's about 500 pounds more. So it's basically just for ride, and hopefully the tracks level that off some to where the ride isn't quite as bad as the tire machine now we have. So it's definitely for ride and, you know, just operation over rough terrain. It just smoothens everything out.
Okay.
And Steve, I asked that question. I called one of our local excavators about that, about the undercarriage to ride control. He buys Caterpillar, so he wasn't familiar with it, but it comes standard on cats. They don't even give it as an option. They just put it on them for the comfort of the riders and the drivers. So I think that's a good option to have it. It's not only for comfort, it's also for injury. These people aren't bouncing around on those machines though.
Other questions? If not, you have the recommendation. I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion we approve.
Second?
Motion by Jim, seconded by C. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion passes. Thank you, Dean. We'll move then to the consent agenda and bring the items up on the screen that are on the consent agenda this evening. And they include consider the approval of a raffle permit for Southwest Minnesota State University, consider the approval of a raffle permit for United Way of Southwest Minnesota, the memorandum of understanding between the City of Marshall and SMSU, consider the striping adjustments on C Street and North Bruce Street, and consider the approval of the bills and the project payments. Is there any item on the consent agenda any member of the council wants removed for separate discussion?
Move to approve?
A second.
Motion by Steve, seconded by Amanda to approve the items on the consent agenda. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. And we'll close the voting. And the motion passes. Agenda item number 8, consider the adoption of the ordinance, section 18-2, related to key boxes. With that, Ilya Gutman will present this agenda item.
Thank you, Mayor Council. This is a totally new section which adds requirement for the key box. The key box is generally known as a Knox box because it's the most common brand name, but we try to have a generic name in the ordinance. This box basically is a box outside that would be required to have all businesses to have, and it usually has a keys and the drawings of the interior of the building, which helps the firefighters and police if something happens in the building. It went through LNO and it was introduced in the previous council meeting.
Okay, thank you. We'll note that both our fire chief and director of public safety are in attendance if there are any questions about the purpose of the key box also. Questions?
If I remember correctly, when this went through L&O, I mean, I fully support this, but this isn't going to be forced upon the owners when they remodel, correct? This isn't something they all have to start doing now.
Yes, in general, yes. On the new buildings.
Correct. Yep. And I think it's a good idea for them to all do it now, but we're not going to force them to do it until they do a major remodel or a remodel project.
Any other questions? If not, I would entertain a motion on the recommendation from the Legislative and Ordinance Committee.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion by Jim, seconded by Steve. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. And we'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 9 is the update on the wastewater facility, MPDS draft permit and chloride reduction grant. I'll begin with Jason Anderson, Director of Public Works, City Engineer.
Thank you, Mayor. I will turn this over right away to Scott Trudson, our wastewater superintendent. They've put a lot of work into the new permit over the last year and a half plus, and he's got an update on where we're at.
Welcome, Scott.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I put my notes together in a little PowerPoint, so I'm just going to basically read through this for you. April 1st of 2022, the city received its new limits notification letter from the MPCA. And since then, the city's had several meetings with the MPCA, Minnesota Environmental Science and Economic Review Board, MESSER, which we're members of, their attorneys, and consultants at Bolton and Mink to address the issues with the proposed limits and the testing requirements. Next slide. What's the stage of the permit? Right now, the city has received a draft version of the new NPDES permit. We're in the middle, well, not in the middle, we just started our 30-day pre-public review period. And during that, we can send comments to the MPCA and anything that we see that isn't right. Myself, Scott Prisbilla, and Bolton and Mink are reviewing that. So EPA could still deny the chloride variance, and if so, would cause the draft permit to be changed prior to the 60-day public review period. The permit renewal issues, copper was one of the original ones. We don't have an issue meeting that, so we're just going to have that as a limit, but it's not a problem for us. Total dissolved solids was not an issue for us either, but with negotiating the MPCA, they've decided they would withdraw this limit, so it's just less paperwork and testing we have to do. That leaves sulfate, phosphorus, and chloride as our issues. Sulfate, the new limit will be 968 milligram per liter monthly average with a 1,147 milligram per liter daily maximum. Sulfates in the groundwater in this area are high, so not surprisingly, Marshall's drinking water sources can occasionally exceed 700 milligrams per liter. And then when you add on the top of that, our industries add to the sulfate levels in our wastewater. This is a graph I made. This is basically the last year's worth of data. You can see the bottom red line is the monthly average we have to be below, and then the top is the daily max. You can see we're quite high in that. Compliance reduction is the only way that we can meet the new limit at the wastewater plant. The city asked the MPC for and was granted a 15-year schedule of compliance, along with the flexibility to modify the final limit if, after 15 years, the MPCA sulfate standard has been changed. We don't want to get locked into something that maybe they'll change in 10 years because of new data. Annual requirements include collecting, monitoring data, working with local industries to reduce loadings, identify sources, propose source reduction plans, and additional of annual reports that need to be submitted. Phosphorus, we've been treating for that for quite some time, but we have a new, more stringent limit that'll need to be reached June through September. That's because phosphorus can have a larger negative impact on the Red River at those times. Currently, the city can just meet the proposed limit with no margin for mechanical or biological failure, as we rely on a single phosphorus removal system. To get compliance, the city requested and was granted a 10-year schedule of compliance from the MPCA to provide more time to identify wastewater treatment facility process improvements to ensure consistent compliance with the new limit. As with the sulfates, the city will have annual requirements during the 10-year schedule of compliance. The effluent filters that were installed in 2002 will need to be replaced to meet the more stringent limits. So that'll be something coming up. Staying with chemical treatment or switching to biological phosphorus removal will need to be evaluated. Bolton and Mink will be doing a facility plan for us in 2024. This study, along with the rate study, will provide the city with a roadmap for final permit compliance. Chlorides. Concentration limit is 261 milligram per liter monthly average with a 302 milligram per liter daily maximum. Because a 261 milligram per liter limit is a concentration limit, not a mass limit, lower than normal flows, dry years, which we're in now, tend to drive the concentration levels higher, pushing the city out of compliance. This is kind of a messy graph, but this is the last 2 years. If you look at the black line, those are the flows. And if you look at the blue line, that's the, I said that backwards. The chlorides is the black line and the flows is the blue line. You can see in the spring we have peaks of higher flows and our concentration levels go down. The bottom red line is the monthly average we have to be below, and on the top is the daily max of 302 milligram per liter. So we're close now, we're 330 milligram per liter, but we're not down to the 261 yet. So the limits will become enforceable April 1st of 2024. The city's applied for a 10-year chloride variance to allow us more time to meet the limits. While the MPCA has agreed to the 10-year variance, the EPA also has to approve the extension of time. The city needs the new permit to be in place prior to the April 1st, 2024 chloride limit taking effect, or the city will be in violation of its current permit. Compliance. If more residents and businesses don't comply with softener optimizations, replacements, or removals, city government will need to step in, or the city will be in non-compliance with the permit and face fines. If the EPA approves the city's chloride variance, this will happen in 10 years. If they do not, the variance is not approved, that'll happen April 1st, 2024. The city will have to continue to work with local industries to reduce chlorides. Promotion of the chloride reduction grant to optimize, replace, or remove water softeners will need to be continued. Benchmark goals will need to be met throughout the variance. In addition, annual reports will need to be submitted to the MPCA. Local water softening companies have been doing a great job. The city continues to use social media, radio, printed ads to get the message out. Our staff has mailed flyers, made phone calls, sent emails, done in-person visits with some success. The city still has around $50,000 of the original $100,000 grant available. The deadline to apply for the grant-funded program is April 30th of 2024. City staff recommends continuing the program past the grant timeframe with $40,000 annually funded by the Wastewater's Enterprise Fund. To increase participation, staff has worked with Bolton and Mink and the MPCA to allow opening the program up to residential do-it-yourself installations for $500 rebates. Also offering $500 rebates for removing and going without a water softener. This option would be for both residents and businesses. If the City Council approves this, I will contact each of the water softening companies to inform them of the change of the program. Some of our lessons learned. The easy work has been done. Early adopters have already taken advantage of the salt savings by optimizing, replacing, or simply continuing using their water softener. Some residents, businesses, and organizations refuse to optimize or replace outdated equipment even after being shown potential savings. In all fairness, some larger commercial systems are expensive to replace even when considering the savings. And honestly, some residents just don't want to change. Some of the options we can have for getting compliance, we could set a deadline to have water softeners optimized, replaced, or prove that you don't use a softener. Once a deadline is passed, add a monthly surcharge to utility bills until residents or businesses prove that they are complying. Industries also have to comply. This will be done via the significant industrial user agreements that we have with them between the city and the businesses. The last one, full ban of all salt-based water softeners in Marshall. I know that's harsh, but I'm just putting these options out there. Need to be talked about. Any questions?
So the change to the rebate program to allow the DIY rebate or removal, that will be coming forward as a recommendation at a future council meeting?
Well, I was hoping to get approval for that as soon as possible, even tonight, if that's
Okay.
something that was possible. The state, it's a state program with, funds, so we have to be careful on that. And we did a lot of conversations with the MPCA and with Bolton and Mink on how to do this. And basically what we have to do is we have to account for how much salt or how much chloride is being reduced by giving these rebates. So basically, the do-it-yourself people have to give us their water usage, just like with through the contractors. We have to see the water usage. We have to know how much salt they used to use and how much they're going to be using. I'm fairly comfortable that we can do that with some basic questions. Also on that, with the do-it-yourself people, we're not going to go in and set their water softeners for them. They have to, if they're going to do it themselves, they have to know how to program their water softeners. And honestly, they're not that hard to do. If you can read the directions, I looked at all the manuals that I could find of softeners available in town, and they can all meet the standards, but you just have to program it. Our thought was the people would program it, and then they'd call us, and they would show us how they programmed it, and we'd confirm that it's done correctly before they get the rebate. I did a rewrite of the application forms too, that where I think Jason was going to look over that too, and I'm fairly comfortable that we can do it. But if this does go through, if you do approve it, I would be reaching out to all the water softener companies to let them know that of the change. So.
Well, it's one of those things that it's the next step, and we probably don't want to, we'd like to have success before we go the following steps, which would be more dramatic and
Correct.
and impact a lot of homeowners. So, questions for Scott?
Just question and comment. How many people, just roundabout numbers, how many people have optimized their softener? Do you have an idea? 20%, 30%?
That's a good question. I'll have to go back and look at the numbers. Some of the optimizations early on, some of the softener companies are optimizing, but they weren't even asking. We were offering $50 paid to the companies to optimize. Some of them just went out and did it. They didn't even care about the $50. So there's room for improvement. There really is. But I think a lot of people have looked at it. We've seen improvements, but we're just not there yet. So.
And then the only other comment I'd make, and I've said this before, the reason government makes ordinances is because people won't just do it on their own. This is what I just hope people would do, because it's saving money, saving water. I mean, it's really a win-win. And as a city council member, I don't want to go that route. I would not say we go that route, but just help us out, people. Citizens of Marshall, it's simple, it's easy. I did it to mine. You save water and you save salt, you save money.
Yeah, that'd be ideal.
Other input? Okay, thank you, Scott. A motion would be in order to accept the report as well as the recommendations for the modification to the rebate program.
I, at this time, would make a motion to accept the report and modify. Should it be two different motions, or it's going to be one?
It can be one.
Modify the rebate program.
Second that.
Motion by Jim, seconded by C. Discussion? So Scott, you understand the motion. Any other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion passes. We'll move to agenda item number 10. This is the bituminous chip sealing on various city streets. We have a change order, the second change order, the final change order to consider, as well as the acknowledgement of the final pay request. Jason.
Thank you, Mayor. As you stated, there's a final reconciling change order included in the packet, as well as the final pay request. We had $170,000 in our 2023 budget for the annual seal coating project. The final total came in just under that at $168,018. Staff would recommend that we approve the final reconciling change order and the final pay request. And if we have any questions, I can address them.
Okay, questions? If not, is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
Motion by C, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by John. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion passes. Agenda item number 11, the project for Block 1, Schwan's Corp. 1 addition, the parking lot improvement for Relco, the change order number 3, an acknowledgement of the final pay request. Jason.
Thank you. Included in the packet is change order number 3, the final reconciling change order, I believe, and then the final payment as well. This is the project, the 6-inch concrete surfacing project on the parking lot across the river from Ralco downtown. Project went well. It was largely a removal of the existing surface and a placing of concrete pavement on that ground. There was some extra work that had to occur in some locations to remove some soft subgrade and replace with gravel. Total contract ended up at $227,811.76. This is just under 3% over the original contract amount of $221,243.20. The project went well, and staff would recommend to approve the final change order and the final payment to D&G Excavating in Marshall.
And this project, just to clarify, is entirely assessed and will be paid for by Relco.
That is correct. We'll have a later agenda item where we discuss the assessment, and it's entirely assessed.
Okay. Questions? If not, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'll second.
Motion by C, seconded by Amanda. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion passes. Agenda item number 12, the MnDOT 2025 reconstruction project. We have a amendment number 1 to the proposal for SRF Consulting for the design of city utilities, and this is for the expansion of the project west. Jason.
Thank you, Mayor. You have the amendment proposal from SRF Consulting Group included in the packet for your review. As you indicated, since we originally received approval from council to hire SRF for some engineering design services for water main and sanitary sewer work on the College Drive project, since that time, the project has changed scope, actually probably 3 times since then, and we've added a significant amount of work to this consultant, and they've returned and asked us for an amendment to the contract. We've had quite a few back and forth conversations. I know Eric Hansen, our assistant city engineer, spent quite a few meetings with them going over this and honing in on the changes and making sure that it was representative of what was occurring. So this is where we've ended up. This is a $35,108 amendment. If you combine that with the total original contract, we're at $97,706. At this point in time, we estimate water and sewer costs at roughly $2.3 million. We do feel like this is a fair request from SRF, and we would recommend to move forward with this amendment. Just to jog your memories, we elected to hire SRF because they are the consultant that's doing the design work on the project for MnDOT. And we saw efficiencies by having them do this work when they're already putting together the other plan sheets. It can be hard to dovetail into somebody else's plan set sometimes. So if there's any questions, I can answer them.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Questions?
They kind of have us over a barrel on this one with SRF doing it for the state, that it works the most efficient. Not it's the most efficient way to do it, but it's the most efficient way to do it. Because you guys try to design this, as you said in our other meetings, the state does not like that, do they?
We can do it on our own, and we have in the past, but we thought it made the most sense to work with SRF on this one because of how quickly and easily they can work back and forth with plan changes. Sometimes it's hard to make sure that everything gets caught and captured in the plans when you have different parties working on them. So it's a low percentage of the contract. You know, we charge our engineering fees to the utilities for these services. We'll still do all of the construction project administration as a city staff. Once it gets under construction, we'll inspect and administer the water and sewer part of the contract. So we'll still be heavily involved, and we've been heavily involved in the design too, but we're just having them do the physical drafting and plan presentation.
And we should not see another $30,000
We've,
charge.
I know that Eric and myself have both made it very clear that we think that this is a fair not to exceed amount, so we don't expect to see another change.
Other questions?
What is our out if they do bring another change?
Discussion. That's kind of the issue, right? When you get down the road with someone and you start to work with them and you get committed, we can always walk away. We can always take their work, have them turn it over, and we can finish it, I suppose. But I don't think we'll run into that issue. I think we've had a lot of really good conversations, a lot of positive conversations. I think that both parties understand the expectation.
Any other questions? Thank you, Jason. What is the wishes of the council regarding this recommendation?
I'll make a motion to approve the not to exceed amount of $35,108.
Motion by Amanda. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by John. Discussion? If there's no discussion, we'll move to a vote. I'll close the voting. And the motion passes. We'll move then to agenda item number 14, consider the resolution adopting the preliminary 2024 levy. So we'll call on E.J. Moberg, our Director of Administrative Services, to present the preliminary levy. The preliminary, excuse me,
Mr. Mayor, we're missing item 13 on the agenda.
I'm sorry, I was jumping ahead there. So agenda item number 13 is the Schwann's Corp. 1 addition parking lot improvement. This is the Relco parking lot, so we will consider the resolution that would adopt the assessment. So Jason.
Yeah, thank you. As identified earlier, we do have an agreement with Nakamas Enterprises, the owner of the property where that parking lot project was constructed. They've authorized us to do the construction on their behalf and turn around and assess them for those improvements. After you include the total construction amount and add our engineering fees, we'll be assessing an amount of $264,261.64. payable in equal annual principal installments extending over a period of 8 years and at an interest of 5.27%. If there's any questions, I can answer them.
To be fair on this, we are also, this is the parking lot we have a private-public partnership with, correct?
That is correct.
So they are paying an assessment. To be fair, we are also leasing this parking lot back from them.
That is correct.
So I mean,
We are.
just so that we're exchanging money, but at the end, yes, it's an assessment. We're leasing the parking lot back. It's a good agreement, but just to be fair, that this money is not strictly coming back to the city to be used for the city. It's actually going back to Relco.
And they
In a
retain
lease.
ownership of the underlying
Correct.
property and pay property tax on it.
They will. It's a good apartment. I just didn't like that they're paying assessments, so there's a complete understanding of what's going on here with the public. And it is a good agreement.
Any other questions? If not, is there a motion to consider the resolution that would adopt the assessment?
So moved.
Motion by Steve,
Second.
seconded by Amanda. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. We'll now move to agenda item number 14. Agenda item number 14 is to consider the resolution adopting the preliminary 2024 levy. I will call on E.J. Moberg, Director of Administrative Services, to present this agenda item, but know that this is the product of budget work sessions that the council has held. Staff has done an extensive amount of work to bring us to the point of the preliminary levy, which is the not-to-exceed levy that needs to be adopted by state statute by the end of the year. It can be reduced after that time all the way up until the adoption of the final levy, which will occur following the Truth and Taxation hearing that will be held in December. With that, EJ?
Thank you. As you say, this is the preliminary levy that would not be able to go down. We have to certify it by the end of this month because the 30th ends up hitting on a Saturday. You get till the 2nd. We meet once more if you decide to delay decision tonight for some reason. Again, we did work on some information after the last work session as far as where we were at. This current proposal in front of you is a 9.9% increase of a total net property tax levy of $8,988,670. We feel it is doable. We made a lot of trimming and cuts based on areas that we're trying to come into this year's budget or plan. We feel it's achievable. I don't know if there's going to be a lot more initial room to play or to cut as at this point.
Okay. Well, EJ, thank you for your work and especially following up on the council direction. So thank you, as well as the rest of the staff that have worked. Questions for EJ? If not, I would entertain a motion for the resolution adopting the preliminary 2024 levy.
So moved.
Motion by John. Is there a second to that motion?
Second. Second.
Seconded by C. Discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Steve.
so this is the maximum levy that we can do, correct, EJ? Just for the public's knowledge?
Correct.
And we've worked a long time on this and a hard time, and we've already gotten it down quite a bit. But so the public knows this is not a fun thing for us to do. We don't like to do it, but the costs, as everybody knows, have gone up and up and up, and that doesn't spare the city. And we do have a nice city. We do have nice roads. We do have nice facilities. We have a great city, and we've got to pay to keep it. So I would speak in favor of this as much as I hate to do it. So I would make a motion to approve the, yeah, never mind. I just will speak in favor of it, even though I don't like it.
Yep.
Thank you, Steve. Any other discussion on the motion?
Well, as I want to concur what Steve says, is a lot of times like tonight we'll have a short meeting, but there's hours between council members, staff that went into this that is not always seen. And I'll use an example of last week. I sat with Sharon and EJ for a couple hours going through this because I'm one who said I don't want double digits. And EJ took me serious, and I appreciate that, EJ. And we sat for hours, not that we did it alone, but we all as a staff. This is stuff that goes on that people don't see, that there's hours that go into this, that we put into this as council and as staff. And I do appreciate the staff and the work they do into this. Because you're right, Steve, this is not fun.
Nope.
Other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. We'll move then to agenda item number 15, Commission Board Liaison Report. Steve?
I have nothing.
Amanda?
I don't have anything either.
From my part, the Southwest Regional Development Commission will meet this coming Thursday in Lakefield. John?
Nothing.
See?
Nothing.
And Jim?
I have nothing.
We'll move then to council member individual items. Jim?
The only thing I have is, I was not here last meeting, is schools in session. Watch for kids. I see Officer Marshall has left, but watch for those flashing lights and slow down. You see kids and bikers. They're out, so be careful with them. That's my annual fall speech, so.
See?
On Tuesday, the 19th, is that the 19th on Tuesday? We do have Welcoming Week event at Justice Park. I believe it is 5 to 7. So there is free egg rolls, so bring the family out and come welcome the community, welcome each other out. So we're really excited about that.
Great. John?
Nothing.
Steve?
I have nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Amanda?
I don't either.
Two quick things. Today, the Minnesota Municipal Utilities Association Lineman Rodeo was held in Marshall. This is an annual event that is in Marshall, and it's in Marshall because of the MMUA Training Center. So not only is it a chance for the linemen to show their skills and also their safe practices, but also it highlights the importance of the MMUA Training Center, and we're fortunate that it is located here in Marshall. It brings people into Marshall frequently for training events. The other thing I would say is that earlier today, Stephen Anderson, city clerk, and I did a video that will go up on our social media that will provide details about the upcoming vote, not how to vote, but more the voting procedures as far as when absentee voting begins and when the last day for absentee voting would be, and some of the residency requirements, age requirements, that type of thing. So we covered that, so that would be on social media probably later this week. With that, we'll move along then to staff reports, and Jason, we'll jump right to you.
Thank you. I didn't find a good moment to mention it when Scott was presenting, Scott Trutzen, but I just wanted to point out that the wastewater staff have put a lot of effort into the chloride reduction. He didn't mention it, but I know they've made numerous site visits, met with numerous higher water users, had meetings about chlorides, done a lot of outreach, and it is making a difference. It's just more work to go. So we're applying for that variance, but there is work occurring and it'll continue to occur. I think it was last week we had our MS4 program audit. That's the first time we've ever been audited with that program since we started in, I don't remember if it was 2007 or 2011, but, Eric Hansen and Greg Swanson on our engineering team both put in quite a bit of work to put together all the paperwork required for that. It's a pretty extensive audit, but I think we'll get results in the coming month or months, but all things look like we're in a good spot. So I think we're okay there, but I just wanted to let you know that occurred. Last week, the Joint Airport Zoning Board held a public hearing in these chambers to entertain public input on the new proposed airport zoning ordinance. So that was a good meeting. The JASB did approve the ordinance after that hearing. So the next step is it'll go to, I believe, the Commissioner of Transportation. If it gets signatures at that level, it'll come back to this council for your consideration. And then I think it also goes to Lyon County for their consideration. Met with the Downtown Business Association. Eric Hansen and I were invited to stop in at their last meeting to talk about parking and the downtown project and some concerns. It was a good discussion. The ultimate outcome was that we'll get this project done, we'll get everything open, and we'll just see how things work before we discuss any sort of short-term parking stalls, like 15-minute or 1-hour parking stalls, for example. The downtown project's going well, speaking of that area. Concrete's going to be going down fast and furious for the next few weeks, so you'll see continual change if you pay attention. Every day it should look a little different. So it's an exciting time to see that buttoning up. Channel Parkway is being paved as we speak as well, so that's nice to see that. Hopefully by the end of the week, that's covered and paved. I don't know if we'll have it striped and open yet, or if it'll be early next week, but that's coming shortly. Lastly, the Legion Field Phase 2 pond project in the Parkway addition. The pond is completely excavated, so you can see the large hole in the ground. They're putting tile in the ground now, and they'll finish some pipe work over the next week or weeks. So that's getting close as well.
Will the trail be replaced?
It will be, yeah. We've had quite a few questions about that from folks wondering where the trail went and if it's coming back, and it will be. The pond had to take up some of that space, so we're just rerouting it. That's all I've got.
Any question for Jason? Okay. Pam Whitmore, City Attorney.
Yeah, not really anything for the good of the whole. I do want to make the council aware that I'm in constant communication with the chief and working with him as he works with the school district, just staying on top of this school resource officer issue, which you may or may not have been reading about in the paper. So,
Okay. Thank you, Pam. The remaining agenda items include the administrator brief for the council's review, the listing of cash and investments, the listing of building permits currently, as well as the listing of upcoming meetings. Is there anything else to come forward this evening at this meeting? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Steve, seconded by Amanda to adjourn discussion. If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. We are adjourned.